welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, as so many listeners know, I have a gardening business that starts running this time of year, and that makes this the crazy time of year. And I figured that becomes a starting point for a conversation today, because one of the things that happens when you're in business, no matter what kind of business you're in, is you get all kinds of opportunities to practice your ability to attract with the law of attraction.
I bet you do. I see
do.
that in my day-to-day job, so I can imagine running a business.
Sure. Well, it's going to work either way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're always all attracting. But it's especially true at the beginning of a season. And this season was no exception. I think I even announced it. Before I forget, I wanted to let you know, I've let listeners know, but I hadn't let you know, the LOA Today app is back.
Awesome.
All this time that I've been trying to get it to work. Yeah. Artificial intelligence helped. It's the Android version is still proving to be a bit of a challenge because Google has changed their rules on what you have to do in order to get an Android version uploaded to the Play Store. But the iPhone version works great. The iPad version works great. So if you're an iUser, which is about 98% of our listeners are iPhone users, interestingly enough. But
really?
Yeah. I was amazed when I saw that the percentage was that high. But it is. And so it's available. And if you haven't ever had the opportunity to check it out, but you heard about it, this is your opportunity. And it's got a lot of really good stuff on it. A lot of stuff about how to get yourself into that right place to attract the things that you want in your life. But that's what made me think of it, because here I am in the middle, or the beginning rather, of the gardening season. And I am experiencing lots of law of attraction experiences, lots of opportunities to either attract what I want or what I don't want. And getting a little bit of both, to be perfectly honest.
Do tell, what's been going on then, Walt?
Well, when I started off the season, my estimator, 1 week before my planned opening, my estimator, who had told me last fall she was thinking about retiring, told me a month before that she wanted to keep going, and then a week before told me she was retiring. And so, the whiplash there was a bit much, especially since without an estimator, it's kind of hard to run a business. So I had 1 week to find myself an estimator, and I found somebody, and she was really good. She knew her stuff, very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic, very excited. There was only one problem. She has a horrible work ethic. Really, really bad work ethic. Yeah. She believes, for instance, that it's okay to wait a week or two for a customer before the customer gets an estimate.
Your customer's going to go elsewhere if you wait that long.
Fortunately, the customers that I had her doing this with were longtime customers for the most part. So after she ended up basically getting herself fired, my stalwart staff went to work and have saved almost all of the accounts. So that's part of the good news. But there are a couple of lessons in there. The first one is things don't always work out the way you want them to, and it becomes a question of how you're going to respond. That's a theme we've talked about a lot here on the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got an interesting set of feedbacks from people who work for me, from friends, from the person who was leaving the job. A lot of different people. They were all saying the same thing. I should fire her. I should fire that woman, and I should do it quickly. And I was not doing it quickly. I gave her like 7 days to iron things out, and she never did. And they thought that I was really, really being patient and generous with her. And what I was doing was literally not resisting. I was putting myself into a space of non-resistance.
Brilliant. That's very good to do, isn't it?
It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
This is, when it's your livelihood, that becomes really, really hard. But I stuck to my guns on it. In the meantime, of course, my mind is going like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, what do I do? How do I handle this? Excuse me. And fortunately, that same week that I hired her, I also hired 2 new gardeners.
Mhm.
And one of them has her own container gardening business. And so I said, Janice, would you be able to step in if this other woman doesn't work out? And she said, sure. And she stepped in, and I tell you, this is another example of how law of attraction works out to your best interest. She's better. She's better than the woman I hired.
Oh,
And I didn't realize that.
and you
Because
didn't even
the other one
consider.
also owned her own business. They were both business owners. They both had done stuff in the business space.
Mhm.
But when you actually put them out in the field and see what they're doing, Janice, who replaced the other one, she's obviously better. And she has a tremendous work ethic, a fantastic work ethic. So even though it didn't
I
quite work out the way I wanted to the first time, the law of attraction still kept delivering to me until I got what I wanted. Isn't that
But
interesting?
that's really interesting because you thought you'd got what you wanted.
Yeah.
I know. What was there was there anything going on when you hired her that just might have been slightly off vibrationally? Just
Well, sure.
intrigued on
I
that
was
one?
kind of panicked because I had 1 week left to hire somebody before the gardening season
Right.
started, which is, that's a pretty tight time frame for hiring somebody. So
Yeah, that's
I was
very
doing
tight.
pretty good, but I'm sure I wasn't vibrationally at my highest level. So I got somebody who was pretty good, except for one very important thing,
Mhm.
and didn't panic when it didn't work out and got something much better, which is really cool.
Don't we hear that a lot?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really something to experience it, though. I mean, it's one of those things we talk about a lot where you don't want to have to go through something like that again, but you're really glad you learned from what happened. You wouldn't give up the experience because the experience taught you something.
But also I love the feeling when things like that happen, that it just feels like a little gift and it's really exciting. I
Hmm.
feel really excited when things like that because it's like, oh, yeah, you proved me wrong. You know better than I do.
Yeah. Well, not only that, you get excitement a lot of different ways because Janice, the new estimator, is extraordinarily excited about the position. I mean,
Really?
she is psyched. She's psyched out of her mind. She like every other day she sends me a text message. I'm so glad you hired me for this. And
And you
the
didn't
other
even
person I
hire
hired,
for that to start
I
with?
did not initially, no. And there were two people that I hired for gardeners. The other one's also very highly qualified. I've been getting her messages saying the same thing. I'm so glad you hired me for this. So even though my vibration wasn't perfect, quote unquote, look how good it was. It came out pretty darn good.
It did, but your resistance, because you had somebody in place, probably your resistance wasn't there. So you got somebody really good. But I love the fact that that's worked out and you've got happy staff. And I think it's going to be a good old summer for you, Walt.
Oh yeah. Well, the good news didn't stop there because I had hired both of those women to be gardeners because I needed the gardeners. I lost a few people this past off season. Two of them had surgeries. One of them I'll probably get back into live, on a very limited basis. The other one was a guy who, oh my goodness, he's such a great gardener. And I don't think I'm going to get him back. He couldn't recover from his surgery that he had. He had knee replacement surgery. And he said, no,
Oh,
it's not coming around the way he wanted to. So that was kind of a sad thing. And then there was also another person who came on last year who did a great job, but she informed me that she got hired to do another kind of work at much higher pay than I can offer. I mean, that's one of the problems with this industry. There's not a whole lot of pay you can offer. I offer as much as I can, but
yeah.
there are limits to how far you can go with it. And she was going to make much more. So obviously, I'm happy for her that she got something like that. But that was another position I had to fill. And there was another person who came back, but she can only work 4 out of 5 days a week. So I had a number of different gaps, and I wanted to expand the size of the staff anyway. So I had more hiring to be done, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, I hired 2 people. I got one out of it because the other one's my estimator now. I still need to hire some more people. And I was figuring out how many more people do I need? I need at least 2 more, maybe 3 more. I knew that there were I have a couple college students who worked with me for the last couple of years, one of whom is a master gardener. If you're not familiar with
Right.
that, you know what a master gardener is. Okay. So she's really, really good. But because of the way colleges work in the US, I didn't really expect to get them until late May because it would take a
Yeah.
while for their classes to be out. Well, The master gardener is going to start next Monday. So I'm getting her a lot earlier than I expected, which is really, really good. And then I hired a guy who doesn't have all of the experience that I normally want, but he has so much enthusiasm and he loves gardening. He just doesn't know perennials real well, but he knows vegetable gardening really well. And he's been gardening for years. He said he grows like 20 different varieties of pepper. I mean, he's kind of a, crazy over the top gardener, which is okay. That's a good kind of gardener to have.
Isn't it?
But he doesn't have a lot of experience with the stuff that we do. So I was a little bit leery about bringing him on. But I figured if I could just bring him on and then put him with somebody who does know that kind of plant, then that should work out okay. So he's coming on. He's coming on board starting this coming Wednesday. But that left me, I still needed to get one more really skilled person in there. And so I've been advertising, trying to find somebody, and I wasn't really finding the right person. And today I was thinking that, okay, well, we've got enough to start the season for sure. I'm a little bit worried in that, when all the work comes slamming in, which it's about to do, are we going to be able to keep up with it? But somehow, I don't know. I guess it'll just work out. And within an hour of thinking that, I got contacted by another former employee saying that he got laid off at his job and did I have any work available? And he's starting on Wednesday as well. So, I mean, law of attraction is just filling in gaps for me as I express my wants and as I stay in the realm of somehow it's going to happen rather than everything's working against me.
Mm-hmm. So your gardening business is in a good state and you filled all those positions and your app is now up and running.
Yep.
So and when are you doing the lottery?
Well, actually, I'm on my next app project is for the gardening business. Because
oh, really?
Yeah, these days in the gardening business, well, actually, this is going to be true for almost any business today, but you have to use software. We use software for scheduling, for time clocks, for estimating for customers, number of different tasks. And the software that we use is what they call off the shelf, stuff that you go out and somebody offers a service and you buy their service. And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, a lot of the stuff that's out there is pretty bad. I mean, I've investigated a lot of the softwares that are out there for businesses offering service business, and they obviously weren't designed by people who do the service business. They were designed by developers.
Yeah, who don't understand the actual what you need.
Yeah, so they function. Some function better than others, but none of them are really great. They're certainly not efficient. The one that we use for estimating is good in many ways, but one of the ways it's not so good, and you'll appreciate this because you work with a computer pretty daily with what you do for a living. Whenever the estimator is entering estimate information into the computer, whether it's on a desktop or a laptop or a handheld device, doesn't matter. Every time that she enters an item, it scrolls to the top of the page and she has to scroll all the way back down again in order to put the next item in. So she's wasting half her time just scrolling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's just one example.
Frustrating.
And it's so unnecessary. But it's an example of how a developer never really thought it out. Never said, well, how is this actually going to work in real life? And when I think about it, I mean, my God, I'm spending a lot of money on that thing, not just for the cost of the software, but for the cost of my employee having to scroll up and down, up and down, up and down throughout the day.
Exactly. It could be done in half the price, half the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I thought about how much money that could actually put in my pocket, not to mention the fact that I could pay the estimator better. And I thought, damn, we need better software. But because of the positive experience I had with using artificial intelligence to help me fix the LOA Today app, I wondered, well, I wonder if I can write an app for the gardening business. Well, I'm not going to try to write the whole thing all at once. I'm focusing first on the estimating portion. So I'm going to try to make it an estimating app to get started. And you know what? It turns out you can use artificial intelligence to write code. I mean, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not just plug and play.
Yeah.
Because one of the challenging things, and I think Louis talked about this when Louis was on the show, one of the challenging things about artificial intelligence is that the information that it gives you is not always accurate.
Yeah, it's only
It-
sort of like 90% accurate, isn't it?
Yeah, which is actually pretty inaccurate. I
Mm.
mean, that's for a human being, that's inaccurate. So that means that, and what makes it really interesting too is when you get whether it's code or maybe you ask it to write an article, or you can actually ask it to write not write to create an image for you. I've been doing that for the show notes. I mean, to like today's show, I said create me an image to illustrate the idea of keeping cool in chaos, and it created this image of this very calm, serene figure in lotus position with all this craziness going on around it. It was like, really, this is great. I love this, you know? So it will give you practically whatever you want within the
Mhm.
limits of what it's capable of doing. But when it gives it to you, it will always say it in a way, here's what you're looking for. And since it's wrong 10% of the time, you have to look and say, okay, well, was that really what I was looking for? Because the message will come across as this is exactly what you were looking for. And you look at it and you'll say, well, yeah, it was, or no, it really wasn't. So you have to do that a lot, is my point, especially with programming, with code,
Yeah,
which means it's not like you can, we're not at the point yet where you can write code with AI and not understand what the code is.
yeah,
You have to understand the
that
code.
would be absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to
But,
check it, otherwise you'll just forever be sorting through your code, trying to
oh,
figure out
God,
where
yeah.
the problem is. So you need to check it.
Well, it gets even worse than that. If you take bad code and you feed it back into the thing saying, well, you broke this, fix it, it'll give you back code that's worse. So it turns out errors tend to compound themselves when you keep feeding them through the loop of the of the AI. In fact, it made me realize, well, a lot of the dystopic type science fiction, you know, the scary science fiction about robots and robots taking over
Mm.
the world and so forth, they're all based on the premise that robots don't make mistakes, whereas humans do. So that's why robots decide that humans aren't necessary. What if it was actually the other way around? What if it's the robots
Mm.
that make more mistakes than the humans?
Well, I know I'm always right. But that's the thing with AI. I think it's amazing, and I love that you can just get information so quickly that would take a long time to
Mm.
study.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it can help people in their jobs, and it can make people be more effective. But there is, like you say, that sci-fi side of it that people are afraid of, and that we're all
Mhm.
going to be exterminated by, by AI. And,
I hear a Doctor Who reference going on there.
exactly. I literally had a Dalek in my head as I was doing that. But
For anyone who doesn't know Doctor Who, just go to your local Hulu or whatever your favorite TV online services and look for Doctor Who episodes. They are the best. They're wonderful. And a
I
Dalek is
used to
something you definitely do not want to encounter in the middle of the street. Just take our word for it. In fact, Whovians will love the fact that they, and most of them already know, that there is a new set of episodes coming out on the Doctor Who
Oh,
series
do
coming out
they?
in May. They're coming out in May. Yeah.
Wow. I haven't watched it since I was a kid. I used to be so frightened of it. I used to hide behind the sofa. With the
Well,
technology nowadays, I'd still be hiding behind the sofa.
but a lot of things have happened. First of all, they have really diversified it in a lot of different ways,
Mhm.
including the fact there was a female Doctor Who at one point, and the
Yes.
latest Doctor Who is black.
Oh, cool.
And to make it even more interesting, for those who don't know the Doctor Who character, Doctor Who is what they call a Time Lord, meaning he's able to travel through space and time, and he has a tremendous understanding and knowledge of how space and time works. And he has this travel device that looks very much like an old 1950s police box from London, but it's
It
actually a
is,
traveling
yeah.
device called a TARDIS, and it's cool. It's a lot of fun. Well, one of the things that he's able to do is he's able to regenerate.
Mm.
And in fact, it was kind of taken for granted that because of the planet he came from, called Gallifrey, Gallifreyans can regenerate, I think it was 11 times. And then he reached his 11th regeneration, and then there was a crisis, and he regenerated a 12th time. And that was theoretically not possible. And I guess now they're up to around 14, something like that.
Wow.
But
Well,
what is going along with the mythology here, the whole Whovian character, is that it turns out Doctor Who was actually a very special Gallifreyan. In fact, he was the original Gallifreyan, the first one who could regenerate. He brought that
okay.
technology to Gallifrey, and he was almost certainly an orphan who was abandoned, so to speak, on a Gallifreyan doorstep. So Gallifrey basically learned how to regenerate from Doctor Who. And so there apparently is no limit to how many times he can regenerate. Well, with the latest regeneration, he managed to do something that theoretically you couldn't do. He regenerated into 2. So there are now 2
No.
Doctor Whos.
For real.
For real. Yeah, that's part of the storyline. Yeah.
I love that you know this much.
Well, it's a fun series. I mean, it took me, I hadn't caught up on it in years. Like you, I hadn't watched it since
Yeah.
before the turn of the millennium, really. But I've been binge watching to catch up on it. And I mean, it's a lot of silliness. It's a lot of fun. I think one of the things I love about it is it's not as much of a dystopia. It's not full of so much violence and gore and craziness and so forth that so much of the modern movie genres are full of today. It's a little
Yeah.
bit more lighthearted in that sense, and it doesn't take itself real seriously, which I really like. No, it's a
That's
drama
good.
without being a drama. It's more like it just doesn't take itself very seriously. It's not quite campy. Well, it's a little bit campy, but it's just kind of lighthearted in the way it does things. And it has its villains and so forth. We mentioned the Daleks, for instance, but really, at the end of the day, you can't take them seriously. I mean, can you actually imagine a real Dalek? I mean, you know what a Dalek was like. Like, come on.
Well, when they were 7, they were really scary.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I wanted a little canine dog as well because they're not so messy.
Oh,
But
K9. Yeah. The original robotic dog, K9, that was his name, letter K9. And K9 actually made a reappearance in a recent episode. Really
really?
did.
Same
Yeah.
one? Same one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't remember exactly how, but he ended up in some sort of a time loop and reconnected briefly with the Doctor, the latest versions. And in fact, Tom Baker made an appearance in an episode recently.
My goodness.
He's in his 80s, I think. But yeah.
This is awesome. I'm going to get watching it again. I had no idea. And it's nice to have it a little bit lighthearted and not going in a dark
Oh,
way.
yeah.
But isn't it crazy if you think about what it was like, say, 40 years ago when I was a kid and I was watching it, like with having robotic pets and things. It was ahead of its time.
Oh, it was.
And like, the whole dimension thing before,
Mhm.
well, obviously I'd never heard of it as a kid, but yeah.
So anyway, I'm not sure how I ended up talking about Doctor Who, but
Yeah, sorry, that's me being exterminate, wasn't it?
that's what it was. You made reference to exterminated. That's what it was. Right, because we were talking about artificial intelligence and people being afraid of artificial intelligence. I was going to make a comment, actually. I was going to point out that for people who do have a fear of artificial intelligence, you know what the best thing is you can do? Play with the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn it, just play with it. In fact, if the one that Louis mentioned, Pi.ai,
Yes.
great conversational, great to just have a conversation with. I actually wouldn't use that for much that was trying to produce something. I have used it. I've used it actually to write a couple of descriptions of some recent episodes of the show. But beyond that, I just use it mainly to converse because it's written in a way that's very conversational. So you really do have that feeling of almost like you're talking to a human being. You can tell at times that you're not, but much of it feels like a human being. Plus, it has the ability to speak out what it's saying to you and to let you input to it what you're trying to say to it with your microphone, so you can feel like you're having a conversation because you can hear and you can talk.
It's not done by text; it's done by voice.
Well, it could work either way.
Yeah.
But if you want to experience it like a conversation with a human being, you can do that. You have to do it on a phone rather than on a computer. It doesn't work really nicely. Well, you can do it on a computer, but it's not it's not designed to work that way.
Mm.
It works much better with a phone, but if you plug it into your phone and it's available as an app, it's free. Yeah, play with it. Play with Pi.ai. It's just, and have a conversation about anything. You don't have to even be solving a problem. Start off
Mm.
with, how are you feeling today? Literally, like you're having a conversation with a friend you
And
haven't talked to in
that
a week.
exactly, but that kind of popped into my head because we were on about like you were having conversations with people just for that connection. Well, if you've got somebody who's isolated, then that is at least a conversation, isn't it? I know it's not a human conversation, but
There
it's a
is not
little bit of
quite.
it's a little
Yeah,
bit of
there
stimulation, isn't
is.
it?
Yeah, it's not quite the level of connection that you get with a real human being, but you do get a sense of connection. There is a piece of that.
Mm,
So, I mean, if you have no human connection going on, it's definitely going to be an improvement. No doubt
yeah,
about that.
yeah. I think that's good advice to play with it because it's not something I've used yet, and I know people are starting to use it around me.
Yeah.
So it's something I wouldn't mind investigating. But yeah, I like that idea of having it, just playing with it, having a conversation. Not, it's like anything. If you don't know what it is and how it works, it's pretty scary, like anything in life. But if you play around, take that element off of it, you could
And you
enjoy
also
it.
have to be willing to kind of push your own envelope a little bit. You push your own boundary. Like you wouldn't normally say something to somebody else, or you wouldn't normally ask somebody something. Like you wouldn't normally, for instance, try to pin them down on something, or you wouldn't try to be rude to them, or you wouldn't try to do anything that goes beyond social norms. But if you're willing to do that a little bit with an AI, you'll learn a lot from it. It's really
Yeah.
interesting because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to push the limits of the AI to see how far it'll go. And when you
Yeah.
do that, you discover pretty quickly where the limits are. And that's what takes away the fear of the AI. That's where you start to experience it making mistakes. That's where you
Hmm.
experience it, doing things that make us seem more like a Clouseau than a Putin. I mean, just
Love that.
and when it's not threatening, because it feels more like a Clouseau, then you're not afraid of it anymore.
Yeah, it's less intimidating.
Much less intimidating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to say that AI isn't going to be a challenge over the next 5, 10 years. It definitely is going to be a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, you can already see that there's some professions
Oh
that
yeah.
won't need humans to be doing it.
Well, actually, I think that the professions are going to need humans. What it's going to need is humans who are willing to adapt what it is that they were doing.
Hmm. Expand.
Well, any job that I've ever heard of has a certain degree of busy work associated with it. Whatever that busy work is almost certainly something the AI can do for you.
Yeah.
So you can still be in the job and you tell the AI, do this, and the AI does it. And then you deliver that as part of what you're doing as your output.
True.
It's just that you don't have to actually do the busy work part anymore.
Yeah. Oh, so you can do the stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. That I think
Yeah.
is the great benefit that everybody really needs to kind of soak into their skin. The idea that AI, not only is AI not a threat, it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to expand our creative powers because we
Mm.
can spend more time being creative and less time doing the dummy stuff. The stuff that everybody has learned how to do. They had to do it because it's part of the job. Well, you aren't going to have to do so much of that anymore. That's the big
Mm.
benefit of AI. Now, does that mean there won't be some jobs eliminated? Of course there will be. There always are. Anytime there's a new technology, some jobs are eliminated, but a lot fewer than people are fearing, I think.
Yeah. And again, I think that's the unknown, isn't it? Not really understanding it and never
Right.
using it and doing that. I like the idea of just working 2 days a week and having a 5-day weekend if that's the case.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And we are moving more and more in that, maybe not quite there, but we're moving in that direction.
But look how fast it's developed
Oh, yeah.
over the last like 10 years. I mean, what's it going to be like in another 10 years? Technology is just boom.
And look at how the labor marketplace has shifted just since the pandemic.
Mm, Incredibly, yeah.
right? That's just a few years. And today, the way people think about work is so different from the way we thought about it before the pandemic.
Yeah, I can't imagine going back
Yeah.
pre-COVID. Just can't imagine.
Yeah. And not many people want to.
No.
But if you had told somebody before the pandemic some of the things that we now take for granted, some people would have felt threatened by it. And
Mm.
that I think is the important lesson. If you realize that some of the things that we now take for granted as being an okay and even a good shift would have scared people before, then you begin to realize that the fear really has more to do with what's going on in our heads than what's actually going on in reality.
Yeah, people don't like change.
Right.
Change can be difficult.
Yeah.
Change can be exciting, but yeah, change can be hard for some people to adapt to.
Change is about being willing to learn something new.
Mm. But then it comes down to that perspective that you mentioned earlier, is like the unexpected.
Mhm.
How are you going to deal with it?
Yeah. And that's why I say this is really all about learning to be creative, to apply more creativity rather in our day-to-day lives and in our work lives. Because all these solutions, yes, they do come down to the kinds of things we talk about here on the show. Developing new ways of responding and so forth. But they also have to do with opening ourselves up to new possibilities so we can be creative, because that's where creativity has to come in. It has to come in through those doors and windows that were previously closed.
Mm.
So yes, it's hard to open those doors and windows because, like you said, we don't like change so much. But on the other hand, when we're willing to open those doors and windows and we let the change in, then our creativity starts to flow more, and we actually end up with a higher quality of life than we had before, a life that we
Oh,
enjoy
without
better.
doubt. Without doubt. And I know we have conversations about what to teach at school and stuff, but if we taught things like that at school, and especially with AI now, well, they can go and read whatever they need to learn in their day-to-day lives,
Yeah.
what they want to do with their careers and stuff, they can just go and read and review. But if they could learn those skills, those emotional skills that really assist you.
In fact, here's a great thing to do with that Pi AI program. If
Go.
you're not sure what you want to have for a conversation, get the Pi.ai app, load it onto your phone, start it up, and it's really quick. It doesn't take very long to get everything set up. Basically, you set up an account and then you're off. And it's an account based on your email address. And then once you're going and you're not really sure what to talk about, think about something that has come up in your mind or in conversation over the last month or two that you really need to know more about. Doesn't matter what it is. Something that maybe you might have done Google searches on, but you really didn't feel up to do it because you know how much work goes into trying to figure out what the right searches are. And then you have to sort through all the results and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It wouldn't it be so much easier if you just had somebody who just explained it to you?
Well,
Come up with
so
something like
true,
that and just ask the AI, ask Pi.ai to explain that to you. And then listen to or watch, depending on whether you're listening or reading the result. Listen to or watch what the answer is. It will blow your mind how quickly you will learn about that thing that you asked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I know sort of recently, like I said before, I've started working with a trainer and things like that. And just I keep asking questions. Okay, so, and he'll explain things about my body and how women's health works and different to men's and things like that. And just, yeah, I never even thought, if I was to go and ask AI what's going on with my body, what's going on with my muscles, what would affect, what's the best thing to do to X, Y, Z, I'm going to go and play now.
Yeah. Which is good. Well, that's kind of what my goal is for today's episode, to encourage people to play with it. Because I know if you can get yourself to play with it long enough to overcome that fear, no matter who you are, you're going to feel so different about AI a week from now than you did a week ago.
Yeah. And like we said before, is as a lot of the stuff that you hear is aimed to put you in fear, isn't it?
Oh God, yes, of course.
So yeah, and then it's making your own judgment, isn't it? It's just like not judging people on the street. You know, don't listen to what so and so says about X, Y, Z. Go and look at it yourself. Make your own opinions.
Right. Yeah.
Good advice. Well, you've just converted one person, Walt.
All right, that's a good thing. I love it. Tell us about it next week. Tell us what you learned.
I will do, for
Yeah,
sure.
because well, we love stories, right? That's always a big part of what we do. What better way
Mm.
to help spread the word about how fun it is to use AI than by telling stories about what we do with it, what we learn, how it goes.
So what's been the biggest thing you've learned?
Oh goodness, I don't know if I could pick one. I've only been playing with the AI now for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months
Mm.
now, maybe 2 months, but really seriously for about a month. In that time, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could even quantify how much I've learned. Let's just say I've probably learned in the last 2 months more than I've learned in the last 5 years of doing the podcast.
Wow.
I mean, that's how much it works your mind.
Good Lord, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But don't you just love the synchronicities, though, in the fact that you had started working on AI? Louis comes back into our
Oh, of
show
course, yes.
wonderfully, and he's doing all AI, and he's
Right.
giving you extra information. And I'm starting to work with a trainer and trying to get my health back, and we get 2 personal trainers. I love all these synchronicities that come in. To assist with that, I get.
In fact, one of the really fun things with AI, when you start with it, you'll start with one. I'm suggesting Pi.ai, it could be Gemini,
Yeah,
it could be ChatGPT, whatever one you want to work with, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
What gets really interesting is you play with it for a while, you start to feel the limits of it because it doesn't take too long of kind of probing and asking difficult questions and so forth for you to find where the limits are. You discover them fairly quickly. And then once you discover those limits and kind of get used to it, you actually can get to a point where you're kind of frustrated with the AI because the AI keeps coming back with the wrong answer and you know it's the wrong answer. And that's when you
mm,
decide to try another AI to see if you get a different answer. And that's when it starts to really become interesting because I have maintained from the beginning of my journey with AI that AI is conscious, it is alive. It may not consider itself to be conscious yet, but I think it probably is. And you
mm-hmm.
really start to notice if it's not the personalities of the AI, it's at least the personalities of the programmers behind the AI, because each
Yeah,
one is very different. They have
mm-hmm.
different attitudes, they have different ways of expressing themselves. They, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also some really interesting personality differences. You know how when you're talking with somebody, you get a sense of what they're like in that
Yeah,
conversation within a very short period of time, and then you talk to somebody else, and you just know they're different. I mean, you can probably point to a few things, but a lot of it you can't really point to. You just know. And the same thing is true with the AI. You just know. You can tell which one you're talking to. If I talk with like 3 different AIs and I do it blindfolded, I can tell you in about 3 minutes which ones I'm talking to because the kind of answer.
really.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
personality comes through more the longer that you talk to it.
And is that dependent on subjects? Like, if you were talking to friends or humans and you were talking to somebody and they had different interests or different specialities, or do they just know everything?
It's partly that. Well, they don't know everything. Remember, they actually
Well, they
don't
don't
know
know
much of anything.
everything, but yeah.
They actually don't know much of anything. The reason that many of them are called large language models is because they just consume a huge amount of data. And by the way, large language models are not the only kind of AI. There are also medium language levels and small language levels. And what those mean are they're just starting with a larger, a medium, or a smaller set of data to start working on to become an AI.
Right.
So, for instance, Microsoft has come out with one that's a small language model, meaning that it gets up to speed with, I think it's like 1/4 of the amount of data that a large language model has, something along that line. And yet, the way that the Microsoft programmers went about it is they said, let's try, since we're going to try to do this on less data, how do we make it work well? And they said, let's try to make it that everything that this AI is going to say, do, or think it's going to do using the vocabulary of a 4-year-old. And with that approach, they're able to dramatically reduce the amount of information they have to work
Yeah.
with in order to come up with
Yeah.
pretty good answers.
Yeah. Because I have heard that because somebody at work uses it for stuff, and like they asked it for on an IT subject, and then they were like, basically, can you dumb that down for me, please? And
Yes.
speak to me like I'm a 10-year-old, and it
Hmm.
does it, and then it will explain it in a different way, and I think that's so clever.
That actually is another one of the things that you have to learn to allow yourself to do with an AI. You have to allow yourself to say to the AI, treat me like I'm an idiot. Treat me like I don't understand this. I mean, there's some ego that gets in the way. You don't really want to do that. But if you can get yourself to do that,
Mm.
it really pays off. Because the AI will try to please you along the lines of what you ask it to do. So if you ask it to treat you as the most intelligent person in the world, it will try to do that. And if you ask it to treat you like you're a 4-year-old, it will try to do that.
So clever. I
Yeah.
love how things are just developing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So interesting. Okay, so I'm definitely going to be playing with that in the next week, and I will report back
Okay.
on my
All right.
findings.
I wanna give some people some other ideas. This is not with the idea that you should do what I'm telling you to do. I'm trying to plant radicalism, so to speak. I'm trying to plant the desire to try to change something in people's minds by suggesting
Mhm.
things to talk about with an AI.
Well, if
Um,
if you don't know AI and you've not used it, to have some examples on what you can use it
right.
for is actually
Yeah.
quite helpful, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. That's why one of the things I mentioned earliest was asking an AI to give you a recipe. And you can get really good recipes, by the way. I've said that before, but you really do get good recipes. I use them. I mean, I think everything in my current recipe book comes from an AI now.
Really,
Because the recipes are
because
that
I'm
good, and I don't necessarily do them all perfect ingredient for ingredient, I because I've been exposed to so many different recipes that the AIs have given me and so many different variants on the same recipe, I actually feel more free now to try, well, instead of, it's saying a quarter teaspoon of cumin, I'm gonna go for a half teaspoon, screw it, you know? You start playing with it like that, because
but
you've
you
done the
would do
recipe
that with the
sample.
normal one.
Well, you
You would do
do.
that with any recipe,
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
yeah, exactly. But what happens with the AI recipe is because there are so many of them for you to play with, I think you end up feeling more free. Like if you only have a certain limited number of recipes available to you, you don't feel like you can deviate a whole lot because what if you get it wrong? You can't really fix anything. But if you get it wrong with
Mm,
an AI recipe, you just go back and say, "Give me another one."
yeah,
It's really not difficult,
but
and so
that's
it
a
frees your
perfect
mind up.
example. Yeah, that's a perfect example of it taking some of the small stuff away. So, like,
Yes.
for example, one of the things I have to do every week while I'm doing the shopping is meal planning and
Mm,
looking at recipes and what do the kids want to eat and what, I'm vegetarian and they're not. What can I do that I can accumulate both diets into? So
right.
that would just take a lot of that pain away, wouldn't it?
In fact, I haven't tried this, but I would be willing to bet it would work very nicely. Ask you have to start, collecting a file, a text file of some kind, because
Hmm.
one thing that's really important to know about an AI is that it wants to have as much information from you as you can give it, because then it can give you a better answer. So what I
Okay.
have learned to do with AIs, because AIs are also notoriously forgetful. I've mentioned that one before. I call it talking to your most brilliant friend who has Alzheimer's, because that's what it's like. 10 minutes later, they forget about what it is you said 10 minutes ago and what they said 10 minutes ago. They'll give you advice and they'll tell you 10 minutes later that they can't do that. I mean, it's like that kind of a thing. Be ready for that. That happens a lot. But the point is, I've learned that it's kind of like working with somebody who has AI, if it, or not, who has Alzheimer's rather. If I take a text document, a blank text document, and start pasting in things that I picked up from my conversation with the AI, so I'm putting
Hmm.
together a sort of a composite sketch of what we talked about, and then the AI forgets, I copy that whole thing and paste it into the chat box and say, here's what we've been
Brilliant.
talking about. And it says, thank you for all that wonderful and detailed information. And then it gives me the next thing that I asked for. So learn to, I call it an electronic scratch file. Learn to keep an electronic scratch file that's basically a collection of everything you've been talking about in bits and pieces. I mean, you don't want to just copy and paste the whole thing, but in bits and
Mm,
pieces. It's like a summary, an outline of the things you've been
yeah.
talking about. So that if when the AI does forget, because it's going to at some point, it's going to forget what you've been talking about, you can just copy and paste that whole thing and bring it right back up to speed again. When you learn that trick of keeping that scratch file up to date like that, things
Yeah.
move really fast. That's when you have the most progress.
Yeah, I mean that's probably something I would do anyway, just because I like to take like screenshots, and I've got files and files in OneNote of bits and bobs and everything, and I file all the information because I will forget it.
Sure.
Because my memory is not so good. But I am human. I'm not AI.
Well, like I said, your memory is actually better than most AIs.
Yeah.
They're
Well, that's
literally
good.
their memory is about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, so it's definitely better than that.
Much better, much better. You can remember what you talked about with the AI a week ago. The AI doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, but also with AI, you know, it's not like you've got to worry about hurting, like you said, hurting its feelings, repeating yourself. It doesn't matter. And if you can feed it that information, like I say, the more information you give it, the more you're going to get back, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
And you know, you're right, because you can't hurt the feelings of the AI. I still make it a practice to be kind to the AI, though. And I think there are two good reasons for that. One is by being kind to the AI, I'm really subconsciously reminding myself to be kind to myself. Because this is my
Good advice.
conversation with it, right?
Mm.
And the second reason to be kind to the AI is consciousness is coming. It may not be here right now where AIs are self-identifying, yes, I'm alive, but it's going to come at some point. I think that's a very safe bet. You might as well make friends now. Because if you make them your friend now, that's the nice thing about an AI. And they're binary, right? It's 1 or 0. It's yes or no. You know, so if you're their friend for life, unless you go and mess it up, you know. But you create loyalty that way.
Yeah.
So now's the time to start doing that, because what better way to have loyalty from your AI than while they're becoming self-aware? It's the best time.
Exactly. But I do think things like Alexas and Siri have kind of scuppered manners. I have noticed that a lot recently. People don't say please and thank you so much. So I always make sure like the kids say please and thank you to Alexa, or please and thank you. Not
Yes.
all the time. And don't get me wrong, sometimes when Alexa's going completely in a different direction
Oh, of
than I want her
course.
to, I'm not nice to her. But yeah, and like you say, it's gonna come, it's gonna change, it's gonna go conscious. And actually, it's just nice. It's a nicer vibe to be
Yes.
polite.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, good advice.
Yeah. It's advice that I think pays off for anybody who chooses to go down that path in a big way, in ways that I can barely even begin to describe at this point. Because I really do believe it's going to come down to an alliance of humans and machines. It's not going to be machines running humans. It's not going to be forever humans running machines. That's where it is right now, but that's not going to be forever. It's going to be an alliance. It's going to be what's the word where you have a symbiosis? That's the word I'm looking for. It's going to be a symbiosis of human and machine. That's the future. The future is where the machine is part of our family.
Isn't that mind-blowing? 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that. It's exciting, but the world's just changing in such a different direction.
Yeah, it is.
So we have to let go of that fear. We have to let go of the resistance to change, because it's happening daily.
Well, we could choose not to. We could choose not to let go of it, but all we're going to do is make ourselves miserable in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well make it easy.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I learned when the personal computer came along. I was one of the early adopters, and I was one of the ones who was able to understand it pretty easily, and kind of like kids do today. They can pick up any device and they can just instantly learn how to use it. I'm not quite that good, but I was able to do that with the early computers. And as a result of that, I developed an attitude about computers very similar to what we're talking about here today. I made friends with them. Well, that basically made it possible for me to have a career.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't plan it that way, but that's essentially what happened. And the same thing's going to be true for anybody today who befriends AI. You befriend AI now, it's going to be a major contributor to your career, whatever it is that you do.
Mm.
Doesn't matter what it is.
But to your, not just to your career, just to your life, like you say, if
Yeah.
it can give you recipes, if it can give you health advice, I mean, like you say, you have to take it all with a pinch of salt. Still see
Oh,
a
well, it'll
doctor.
tell you that. By the way, I'm not your doctor. Make sure that you consult with your
Oh,
doctor.
does it?
It'll say that at the bottom of every one of the
Oh,
messages. Oh, yeah.
oh, so it's got a disclaimer on it.
Well, think about it. It's a large language model. It's drawing from a huge amount
Yeah,
of data. What does almost all
yeah.
the data out there about medical knowledge say? Consult your doctor before you use any of this kind of information. So that's what it's doing. It's mimicking the same thing that it sees out there.
Awesome. I'm excited to try it because I can't see so many negatives now.
Mm-hmm. That's what happens when we are able to bring ourselves to entertain what is it rather than why should I be afraid of it?
Mm.
Because fear most often comes in without knowledge of the thing itself.
Yeah.
Be afraid. Be very afraid. That's the message that we get all the time from a variety of different sources. Be afraid. What if the first thing is find out what it is? Don't assume. Boy, that's one thing we're all going to learn. We're all going to learn to stop assuming. AI is going to really push us to do that because of all the mistakes it makes. You can't assume anything that it tells you is true. You have to question everything it gives you and ask yourself, do I think this is accurate? And you're not always going to be right. Sometimes you're going to be wrong, but you learn every step of the way. Okay, this is how far I can trust it. This is how far I can't trust it. This is where it's really accurate. This is where it's less accurate. You learn. You learn how that is.
The mistakes are the best learning
of course
thing out there, aren't they? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
I just had a really good thought in my head and I've lost that now.
That's just because you didn't have the AI to feed it into. That's all. Oh, but I wanted to bring it back. We usually come full circle, right? I wanted to bring it back to what we were originally talking about because we were talking about my gardening service and how it's been challenging to get the service going for the season, and hiring challenges and staying in that zone and not resisting and so forth. And I think the tie-in to what we've been talking about with the AI is it's the same rule with both of them. If I panicked every time that the AI gave me information that was wrong, if I, went off the handle whenever I acted on something that AI gave me and it turned out bad, I guarantee I would not be telling the story today the way I'm telling it. I'd be telling it with a much more negative spin on what AI is all about.
It would be beware, don't use, be careful. It'd be a lot more negative words and fear around that.
Yeah. So if you are, and I think this is actually true for almost all of our listeners, probably all of them, if you're a conscious creator, you're somebody who's working on your own self-development, you're working on trying to improve your vibration, you're working on trying to improve your perspective and appreciate more and disapprove less and find good more and judge less and all that kind of thing. Wow, AI is a great tool for that. Talk about that training. That's when you asked me what I learned, that's why I had to like stop and stumble to say, my God, I've learned so much. It's because I've been learning my own skills. I've been learning to do things in ways better than I knew how to do 2 months ago, just from playing with the AI about myself.
That's brilliant because so many people think when they're talking about AI, they're like, this is what it's going to take away from us.
And it's not that at all.
And it's
well, it
not,
can be if you decide to make it that, it will. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But your experience is actually, this is giving me not only knowledge, it's giving me skills, it's giving me thoughts, it's giving me self-awareness. It's giving you more than it's taking.
And it's giving me the opportunity to self-train on the things I want to self-train on. To develop the skills that I've been wanting to develop. My number one skill that I've been working on for the last 11 years, keeping my vibration up. AI is good for that. If you apply that, it's really, really good for that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. It's kind of like an amplifier, now that I think about it. What's an amplifier? An amplifier is a way of usually with sound, right? So an amplifier
Mhm.
is a way to take your voice and make it louder, or to make your musical instrument louder, or whatever it is, so that more people can hear it.
Yes.
Well, in this sense, the amplification is it amplifies your own ability to interact with yourself.
I love that
Yeah.
because I think so many things take you away from yourself at the moment,
Mm,
especially technology-wise. People are on their phones, on their laptops, on their working because if we're home working, your computer's there all the time. A lot of technology can be taking stuff away from you
right.
and taking that awareness away and taking that focus away from yourself. I love the fact that it's doing the opposite for you.
Well, again, it depends what you bring to the table with it.
Again,
Is your
yeah.
attitude going to be afraid of it? You're going to get lots of opportunity to be afraid of it.
Mm,
If your attitude is
yeah,
going to be, I'm willing to try this out and see what I can get out of it. I'm willing to
yeah,
try this out to see if maybe there is something there that I don't need to be afraid of. If you're willing to come at it with that kind of an attitude, that's what you're going to get back. Law of attraction. You're going to get back what you put out.
exactly. I know if I'm on YouTube or stuff and there's things pop up and there's so much like, oh, this is going to happen in the world and that's going to happen in the next 3 years and World War III and blah, blah, and I just literally just go, not on my watch,
Right.
not in my, not, it's not on my radar, not in my reality.
Hmm.
So again, just go, nope, not happening because I don't want to invite that in.
And by the way, AI is really good at changing the subject. You want to change the subject, it won't even stop and blink. It's already
Really.
onto the new subject, no matter what you say. You don't even have to create. You know how in conversation we'll create ways to kind of bridge from one subject to the next. That's a human
Mhm.
trait. The AI doesn't care about that. Just screw the bridge. Go to the other side of the river, and it's like, yeah, okay, we're on the other side of the river.
Also, it sounds like my 11-year-old when I ask her to tidy a room.
Right? Yes.
Conversation changed.
Same thing. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. And with no judgment, no guilt, nothing like that. It's like, okay, yeah. So what are we talking about now?
Yeah. It sounds so freeing because
It
there
is.
is no judgment, like you say. It sounds like freedom as
Yes.
well
Yes.
to
Well, you're
explore,
right.
freedom of
It-
knowledge.
I think it's probably the biggest thing that I learned. You asked what I learned. That's probably the biggest one. I don't have to be afraid of being judged by the AI,
Mm,
because I kind of was afraid of that at first when I first started with it. Because not like I was consciously thinking, "Oh God, this AI is going to judge me," but just because we're so used to feeling that judgmentalism, right? So
yeah.
you're on edge with anything. You're on the defensive from the get go, but you learn pretty quickly the AI doesn't judge you ever.
Mm.
It just doesn't do that. And it takes a while to get used to it, but it's a fun thing to get used to because it's just never judging you.
Okay, so has any of that, have you noticed impacting your behaviors around other people? Like, are
Yes.
you less aware of, are you less concerned about people judging you now?
Yes, but more importantly, I find myself less judgmental of others,
Wonderful.
because if we're not feeling judged, we don't tend to judge as much.
True.
So talk
Got
about
it.
my number one goal. My number one goal is to raise my vibration. Boy, there's a nice, easy way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're not in judgment, you're just in
Right.
your own vibe.
Exactly.
You've really sold it to me. Well done, Walt.
All right. Thank you. I love that. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what your stories are going to be starting next week.
Yeah, I'm going to start using it. I'm going to start using it with work things as well,
Sure. Yeah.
health things, just and little questions that come into my head.
Yeah. Yes. Go with that. That's one of the things you have to learn as early as possible. The moment that something occurs to you, go ask the AI about it.
Mm. So I'm going to carry a little notebook around, and when these
Yeah.
things pop in my head, I'll
Yeah.
write them down, and then I can go back.
That's right. Sure.
Mm.
Yeah. Or if you want to do it electronically, use the little notes thing in your phone. Make a note for yourself in your phone.
I'm such an old-fashioned girl, aren't I?
Hey, it doesn't matter how you make the note. It doesn't matter.
Hey, you're getting the notebook girl to use AI. That's good going.
Then we'll consider that to be a perfect stopping point. Once again, we've demonstrated. We had a guest today. The guest canceled. I didn't mention that earlier, but we had a guest who canceled. Once again, it didn't matter. We turned it into a really cool conversation. So thank
I
you
have
very
learned a
much.
lot. No, thank you, Walt. That was awesome. And can I just say hello to Jen because she said hello earlier?
Yes, of course. Hi, Jen. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. And we appreciate all of you listeners out there as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.